You're welcome for our final segment for this morning. It's about Nigeria's transport sector. It's increasingly being burdened by a dangerous cocktail of rising fuel costs and persistent road accidents, particularly those involving heavy-duty trucks. With fuel prices surging and transporters often prioritize cost-cutting over safety, pressuring drivers to maximize their trips and cut downtime. At the same time, frequent tragic incidents like the one in Edo State where Phyna's sister, Ruth Otabor, was grievously injured after being run over by a Dangote truck underscore a glaring gap, especially gaps in road safety, training of drivers, and systemic safeguards. The Auchi accident, which led to the amputation of Ruth's leg, has sparked national outrage and raised urgent questions about road safety protocols and company accountability. Dangote Group responded with a pledge of full support, including medical care and compensation, highlighting the human cost when safety systems fail. Meanwhile, discussions on small transport systems are gaining momentum across the country, viewed as vital for enhancing oversight, training, and vehicle tracking to prevent future tragedies amid economic stress.
So in essence, the confluence of inflation-driven operational pressures, inadequate driver vetting, and systemic safety lapses not only fuels frequent truck-related mishaps, but also makes them more devastating when they occur. The recent Ruth Otabor incident in Auchi has laid this vulnerability bare and intensified calls for smarter tech. So here to help us unravel the root causes and also viable intervention is Dr. Ahmed Oyeyemi, transportation engineer, consultant, and at the Maryland Department of Transportation. And well, you're welcome, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning. So let's first of all start what you think here. What do you think are the leading factors behind heavy-duty truck accidents here in Nigeria? Is it driver fatigue or maybe inadequate vetting of these drivers themselves or even training?
So I would start off with saying that there are a lot of factors behind these heavy-duty truck accidents. Like you rightly said, there are the issues of driver fatigue. These drivers, they drive long hours on the road without rest. And one thing is sure, in Nigeria, there are no real regulations, that kinds of monitor that guides this drivers' fatigue on the road. Situation in America, right? You would have the FMCSA, that is they are regulated by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Now, this agency, they regulate the number of hours these drivers get on the road. You can't drive all through without having any time to rest at all. You can't drive all through like 14 consecutive hours, and then continue to drive. But that's the kind of situation we see with all these tanker drivers, with all these truck drivers. So there are no regulations. I would speak on that. I would also mention the fact that we have poor road infrastructure. It goes without saying, Nigeria is road. We have narrow shoulders, we have potholes, we have weak pavements. These factors basically amplify the severity of accidents. And then you have the case of vehicle overloading, and this is not enforced, because you will see a vehicle that is supposed to be, carrying like 40-ton product, maybe petroleum product, maybe food product, but they go on this road and then the axle is, the weakness is amplified, and then this kind of causes a lot of accidents. And then you have the case of the maintenance culture. I would like to hammer that on that pretty much. Maintenance culture for the the fleet companies we have in Nigeria, it is alarming. I personally have worked in a facility, in a depot, where these people come to load product, to lift petroleum product. And when they do so, before they even get into the facility, there are certain checks that are supposed to be done. There are certain vettings that are supposed to be done. And all of these are not properly done. And what you expect to have when you have situations like that, the answers are very clear. And, I will just leave it at that for now, so we can go on. But of course, when you don't have certain things in place, you know what you're expecting.
You have mentioned very, very key points that you mentioned, contributing factors to what we're seeing. One of them is, the maintenance. The other is the training, and of course the road maintenance, which also eats into it. But let's also go to the stakeholders themselves, the business owners. For in this case, the companies who own these fleets and who own these trucks. What role do they play in the maintenance in terms of the psychology and the welfare of the drivers, the licensing of their truck drivers, the training of their truck drivers, and enforcing and ensuring that the truck drivers adhere to safety guidelines and rules? What role do they play? Do they have a large amount of blame, and do they do this critically?
So I would say that they don't do all of this critically, right? Because if they do, if actually they do, there are certain guidelines that that they are meant to follow, right? For the trucking industry, you will find out that the kind of system that you have in Nigeria, you could be at the comfort of your home. I know it is not the case every time, but you will be in the comfort of your home and you would have your license being brought to you. Unlike in other Western countries, in other places where you would actually have to go through something called the CDL training, where you will obtain your CDL license, right? And now, this is what the companies are supposed to do, but they don't really do all of these things. So the drivers just, basically they get to have like an easy route to getting on the road. They don't have this training where there's a trainer that observes these drivers that could have, been on the road for, testing them and making them, go on certain different scenarios. Like I would say, typical example, like driving for 200 hours, 300 hours to train, to be sure that they can actually go on the road in different conditions, in foggy conditions, in rainy conditions, in nighttime. But what you have is certain scenarios, we've seen it where motor boys, those are called the assistant drivers, right, are allowed to drive vehicles even without licenses, right? So the fleet owners, these companies have to do better with allowing certain trainings to be done. And then there has to be periodic testing for all of these drivers, because a lot of these drivers, there's substance abuse, right? There are a lot of things that could happen. They can be distracted on the road. They want to get to where they want to go to very quickly. And once you're trying to do all of this and you're not following all of the guidelines because there's nobody checking, then definitely you know what the results will be.
What about technology in all of this? What responsibility do the fleet owners have when it comes to monitoring these drivers using technology? You made one small mention in the beginning there, and I do remember that if not in the UK, then in the US, there are certain smart monitoring facilities or apparatus inside of cars, especially pool cars like I don't want to mention names, but the car hailing services, where they can monitor the drivers, how many hours they're doing each time they clock in. Do you think that fleet owners owe that responsibility to safety in Nigeria as their vehicles move across Nigeria, to fit their vehicles with these kinds of safety features?
Absolutely. I would start with there's a system called GPS tracking and telematics, right? It's already in use, and it is like I would say for scalable real-time monitoring for real-life scenarios. Imagine if a driver gets sleepy and stops in an unsafe area, right? The manager can see these on the system, right, and call to advise, to keep moving or to move to a safer place to rest. There's another one that I would mention. It's called onboard speed limiter, right? This enforces compliance with national speed caps. I would give an example. Say on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, speeding trucks are not one of the leading. Speeding trucks are one of the leading causes of crashes. With speed limiters, even the drivers presses the accelerator too much, the truck won't even exceed that speed limit because there's a speed limiter there. And then this ultimately reduces deadly crashes caused by brake failures or tire bursts from overspeeding. And there's another point, real-time monitoring dashboard. That's the one you were kind of referring to. This detects erratic driving and overloading or prolonged hours. I would give an example. Say in a place like there's a fleet manager in Apapa, Lagos, right? And where he can monitor like over 50 trucks heading to Abuja. So if one truck shows any form of irregularity, say swerving, repeated braking, the system flashes a warning. And then the manager gets to call the driver immediately to correct the behavior, right? And then I personally, I'm working on, it's something called, related to intelligent transportation system, where there is the erratic behavior of a driver. Maybe a driver is driving for long hours, he's feeling sleepy. There's a trigger from his seat. Is swerving. There's a lane departure warning system, and it's also triggers like a vibration effect on the driver. And then there's a warning. There's a digital warning on the screen that it needs to pull over to the next rest area. So if all of these are done, and then there's the last point where digital logbook. The US uses digital logging system right now. It's called electronic logging system. It automatically records driver's activity. If all of these things are in place, definitely you would agree with me that the rate of accidents will reduce because there are proper monitoring, the proper integration of smart technologies in this. So yeah.
Right. Let me ask you, Ahmed, as we're talking about, the drivers and measures that need to be implemented, how can the companies track substance abuse? Because the drivers here are notorious for using substances, either alcohol, either smoking on the wheel, eating at the wheel, or whenever they are, where they have their rest, their stop rest, oftentimes it's always on the road. If you go to Apapa, if you're heading towards Apapa on a busy day, or even the Auchi, the Apapa Expressway, you see them littered, right? And you see sachets of, alcohol, as well as wrappers of marijuana, and they mix all kinds whenever they have to rest so they can sleep from the long hours that they drive. How can the companies track that as well?
I would let me first of all pick on the point where we talk about the rest position for these drivers. In Nigeria and in a lot of places in Lagos, we would see clearly that we don't have these facilities, right, for drivers to actually pull over and rest. And that's why you see all of them on the road, which causes congestions on its own, which has its own hazards on its own, right? However, if the government, right, could partner with subject matter experts, this can be done. It is very easy. We have narrow shoulders in Nigeria, narrow shoulders on our road, and then we cannot actually allow these truck drivers and the trucks to be on the shoulders of the road because it causes accidents. So back to the question where how we can track all of these. So if the companies can incorporate periodic testing for these drivers, right? I would touch on that a little bit more later, but let me say that there are devices like breathalyzers, right? Where when these drivers are driving, before they leave the facility, even before they get to where they are going, intermittent stop, and then they can be breathalyzed and checked if there's any content abuse, whether there's any alcohol use or whatever. But ultimately, if a driver would constantly need to be on the road, and there has to be periodic checks, right? America do this a lot. The United States do this a lot. And I've been part of a project with the Maryland Department of Transportation where we set up processes where drivers I think it would be like every 2-3 months, they would come and check their blood system, take their blood samples and test for alcohol use, for drug use, for any substance use, And if drivers understand that periodically they are going to be tested, They are going to be brutalized. They are going to be checked. It would curb that, right? It would curb that. It would take somebody that wants to lose his job as a driver to continue to be on constant use of alcohol, because he knows that in 3 months it cannot be clean. It would the substance will still be in the system when tested. So all of this is what I believe the firms, the fleet companies, the trucking companies can implement to reduce these rates to the barest minimum.
Right.
To keep our roads safe.
Okay, Ahmed, there's I'm sure you've seen the videos, you've seen the training video of the distraught, heartbroken sister, Phyna, over the accident of her sister, Ruth Otabor, which have now resulted in the amputation of her leg. We've also seen the statement from Dangote refinery, or rather Dangote companies, regarding this incident. And so I have to ask you, one of the most interesting things about that video was going under there and seeing people recount their own experience with the same company, with exactly the same. Either the person had died, had lost an arm, a leg. It's always the same thing, right? And we've also seen VDM, which is a very dark man, also weighing on the matter with his own video. Where does that lie? You've worked with FMCG companies, companies who have fleets like this. So I'm going to ask you, what's the best way to handle emergencies in situations like this? Do they step in? Because it seems like companies are always aloof when it comes to matters of this.
Yeah, so in this instance, I would say that most of the time when all of these accidents happen, right, the companies don't want to really take responsibility, right? So it would involve the government, right, coming in, right? It would involve the government coming in to make sure that they take responsibilities for this, because they own the truck, right? They employ the drivers. Whatever kind of trucks they're using, for a fact, a lot of the trucks that we use in Nigeria are very old trucks. So they require more maintenance and a whole lot more. And the kind of drivers that they use, most of them are not properly trained. They're just, assistant drivers that just automatically turn into drivers. So definitely, these companies have to own up and take responsibilities. But this will not happen except the government helps out as well. So this would involve law enforcement, the authority, to come together to make sure that these companies answer for this.
Ahmed, I must say thank you so much for taking out the time to join us. It's been sublime having you. Technology is important, but the Nigerian situation also, begs to ask a question about how much a technology needs to be adopted when you look at the education level of the drivers, especially the truck drivers. But that would definitely be a conversation for another day. Ahmed, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.